Hey guys, I'm Jose and this is tutorial number 6 on classes, right? So one of the main important features of working with Python in Rhino, as opposed to VBScript, that was the previous scripting editor that Python that Rhino had, is the strong addition of this object-oriented language, right? That means that we can actually work with classes and objects. If you're interested more in the description of what is a class, I think that the tutorials that I have on processing really kind of explain that in a much nicer way. So I'm going to assume that you have certain ideas of what an object and a class is. If not, you can just go and check that tutorial. It's tutorial number 7 in processing, and it gives a little bit of an introduction of what objects and classes are. Nevertheless, we're going to just explain how to write one and what would be the way to implement some of that functionality, right? So basically, a class is it's a way of defining an entity that we will use in many different ways, and it contains a description of a name and also several different functions inside. So let's start writing a very simple class. And we're going to take it from there, okay? So class, my class, right? And we're going to say the name of the class will be anything really. So for now, we're just defining one variable inside. In this case, it's a string that is the name of the class. The actual name of the class is my class. That's the name that we're giving, because we're declaring the class with this keyword class and the name of the class. We're defining a variable inside called name, right? And this is what we're assigning this string to. So this will be like a global variable of the class. So now we can do some methods, something like def print name. This doesn't exist at all, so we're just gonna this is like defining our own function. So we're gonna say self. This is important because it tells the function that it refers to. It's a function from the class. And in this method, we're gonna just say something like print self.name. So this allows to access any of the variables that are part of the class. Self refers to this class, so we have access to all the variables of the class. Like in this case, the only one that we actually do have is name, right? So this would be like a very simple definition of what a class is. The great thing of this, as you could start imagining, is that we can add as many methods as we want here and as many variables as we want. So we could start associating data like of an object, right? So an object could have different kind of information like temperature or anything like curvature and size, and basically we can call different instances of this class, and we'll see how to do that, and each one of them with different values. Right now, if we call different instances of this class, all of them would have this keyword name Jose, right? So let's see first of all how to call this class into the world, right? And then we're gonna see how to do some variations to this and make it a little bit more functional, right? So what we're gonna do is make an object. The difference between classes and objects, as I mentioned, is that objects is the result of what we create with a class. The class describes what an object is, and the object is basically the instance of the class. So we're gonna say obj1, like object1 is from my class, right? And we're gonna leave empty parentheses here, right? So this is saying create an object from this class, right? And now obj1 has access to all the functions inside the class, right? So we can say obj1 dot print name and leave that empty as well, right? We don't need to specify the self. The first argument self is just specifying that it's for the class, so we don't really need to specify anything here, right? So let's see what happens if we do that. We are getting an error here, and it says that we need to add the T to that, right? So, cool. We're printing the name, the variable name. We're calling this first function, right? If we would do a different, like a new function here, so say print alert or something, right? Something like that. We would have different functions, right? If we call this function, we would print this text alert, and this other function would be printing that other name, right? So if we run this again, we would be calling that function, or we could just call, I'm gonna just gray out that one, and I'm gonna just call print alert. Right. Oops. So sorry, I forgot the obj one dot. Right. So we're accessing the function inside the object, and you can say that we're printing that alert. So in this case, we have two different functions, two very simple functions. We're doing different things, right? So this is a very kind of useless class, really, because the only thing that it contains is just this variable of a name that we cannot do anything with it. But this is somehow the structure that we would use for building a class. Let's do something a little bit more interesting, right? So let's remove this, and let's include the definition of a constructor, right? This declaration that we're going to do now will allow us to initialize the class with certain information, and you'll see how it's done. We're going to write this and underscore. And I'm going to explain you what all this stuff means, right? So what this line is saying, we're going to finish this second line saying name equals underscore name. Right. So what this first line is saying is defining a way of initializing the class, right? You need to write it like this, because this is the key way in which you will describe how this class gets initialized. And you're specifying that you need to provide a name in order to build this class, right? This would be mandatory. Like if you don't provide this information, the class won't exist. And then you're specifying that this input that you're giving right here, it's going to be assigned to a variable inside the class called name, right? So if we would try to run this, we would get an error now saying, hey, there are two arguments given, you need to provide one, right? So the class, my class, you need to provide one argument called anything, Anna, right? You need to provide one argument in order for this class to work. And now I'm gonna just remove this line over here and print name function. Let's see. And now we're printing that name, right? So the print name function will print whatever the name of this class is. That is what we initialize here. And then we have different functions printing different stuff. So now you can understand the concept of a function, right? So we can just create different instances of this, like different objects of this class. In this case, we're going to say object 2 is called job, right? So if we do this now, you will see that we have created two objects from the same class, each one of them with different names. And this is the strength, I would say, in which both Java, C++, Python have in order to generate these objects in which you would start building up different functions. You know that these functions will rely on the main variables or the variables that the class has described. This is a very interesting way. We will see also how to close this file altogether, the description of the class, and you can call those objects without really having this piece of code here. So in a way, you will be building your own little library of code, where, let's say, a curve can receive so many different functions that would be specified, and you would be very opportunistic just building an instance of the class and calling a function that is already described by you in a particular way. So this would be fundamental to just start developing some of the code. It's not necessary. You can write the code just by building like a long script with functions and just make it like procedural, like not object oriented. But I strongly recommend that the set of mind that you start developing while working with classes is totally different and allows for really structuring your code and your resources over time, and it makes it really easy after a while to just like connect different pieces of code together, right? So we're gonna start seeing how to implement these classes in the next tutorial. So